I'm joined by my co-host Victor. We're going to have another friend, Kyle, joining us in a little bit, and we are going to be discussing both the House of David episode 7, so penultimate episode, and The Chosen season 5, episodes 1 to 2, the premiere that happened last week. And yeah, there's so much to discuss, so much to get into. But before we do that, just really quick about the Bible Artist. I produce resources focusing on Bible adaptations. So that would be shows that take biblical stories and bring them to life on TV or in film. And, I've got reviews and analysis. I do Bible studies. I do character studies. I do live streams like this, actor interviews, lots of different resources. So please check out thebibleartist.com for more resources. Check out my YouTube page. You can subscribe and like and all that stuff as well. And if you want to support my work, I've got a buy me a coffee to do that as well, either as an ongoing member or just a one-time thing. And yeah, like I said, I'm joined by Victor, and Kyle has just joined us. So Victor and Kyle, thanks for being here.
Hey, great being here.
Hey, thank you very
great
much.
Times.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go get my headphones. I didn't realize I didn't have them. I'll be right back.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. So Victor, before we get into things too much, do you want to share? So we're going to start with The Chosen season 5, I think, and then we'll move on to House of David. Let's just start Chosen season 5. I know from our texts you had some kind of controversial opinions, so I'm curious. Big picture, what did you think of The Chosen?
First two episodes, I thought they were in isolation. They were good. However, I felt that these were probably two of the clunkiest episodes we've had of the show so far. There was just so much exposition that so much of them having to explain Jewish law and what the Passover was and what the situation was between the different Roman and Jewish hierarchies and how all that played out. It's all a very necessary evil that you kind of have to have these kinds of things, especially because the Bible itself doesn't spell out a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like it assumed most of the people reading it would know what the dynamics were and what was important and what wasn't. So to me, it was just like, it's just a lot of exposition, and I just kind of felt it was just a lot of explaining, and there's some other aspects too we can get to, I guess, when we get to it. But
okay. Yeah. So I'll share mine, and then we can hear you, Kyle. So I actually felt pretty strongly in favor of the first two episodes. Now that you're saying that, Victor, I can see some of what you're saying there, but yeah, it didn't bother me too much, the exposition. But I had a few issues like here and there. In episode 2 in particular, I had a couple of kind of things where I nitpicked, like theologically or historically and stuff like that. But in general, I really enjoyed the experience. Definitely, I think going in theaters is worth it. I haven't always felt like that for some of the past seasons. I've done it because that's part of kind of the gig of what I'm doing. But season 5 episodes 1 and 2, I definitely thought that there were some real cinematic moments where it was a lot of fun to be in a theater, have the big sound, be surrounded by fans. So I thought it was a fun experience. But I can see what you're saying. They're packing a lot in there, and like you said, they're having to explain a lot. So I could see someone who, particularly maybe someone who's not a Christian or not super kind of read up on theology and stuff like that, it might be a lot for them to take into. So I could see that being a potential issue. Kyle, we're just sharing kind of big picture impressions of Chosen season 5 episodes 1 and 2. We'll get around to House of David in a little bit.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. First, Kevin, I just wanted to commend you, and people out there listening or watching, if you haven't gone to the Bible Artist website, go. It is awesome. I have been reading it lately, and I've been really impressed with the detailed breakdown of these episodes, not just of The Chosen, but The House of David, soon after they come out. It's like thoughtful, like good plot summaries, and then like a good breakdown of the storylines and predictions. And it's like it reminds me like the glory days of the internet back in 2012, 13, when the internet was still trying. And like you could go to really fun websites like Grantland or cracked.com or something. They'd be having great articles every day. I don't see that anymore, but I don't peruse the internet as much anymore either. But just want to like it. Bible Artist website is awesome, so I'd recommend going to it.
Yeah, it should be the go-to site if you're having any more information about this show. That Bible Artist is where you should go.
I swear I did not ask them to say that, but thank you guys.
You got my Venmo info, right, Kevin? Because I gave you like a minute there. Okay. So for The Chosen, season 5, I will probably get into it more into my reasons for this. I'm sorry to say it. I was underwhelmed by the episodes. I was underwhelmed by them. I didn't find them as engaging or entertaining, and there were parts that that dragged pretty good for me. But there were exciting parts too, and there was a lot of good to talk about.
Yeah.
But I was underwhelmed.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. We've got kind of a split group here, which is fun. Like I know that Dallas, he's listened to some of our previous conversations where we haven't all like agreed or all been on board on some of the different episodes, and he loves to hear that feedback. Yeah, I hope listeners too. If you have your own thoughts, definitely feel free to join us in the chat. I'm keeping an eye out on the comments, and I would love to let us know if you loved episodes 1 and 2, if you hated them, if you were somewhere in between, if you had particular issues that you want to point out. Would love to involve those in our discussion as well. Yeah, well, let's get into discussing some of the specifics of the 2 episodes. So yeah, let's start by discussing kind of the whole decision to begin. It looks like, at least based on what we've seen, each of the episodes of this season is going to begin with an introduction that focuses on a portion of the Last Supper. Victor actually predicted this, a while ago, back in like probably December or something.
Whoa!
So,
yeah. Good work.
I feel very, very vindicated or validated that I predicted that.
Yeah, I remember like you came out with that prediction, and then you were kind of like starting to hesitate. You were like, "Oh, I don't know. I've seen some things. I'm not sure." But you were totally right. Each introduction of an episode begins with a portion. They're not kind of like chronological. So we start towards the end of the Last Supper, and then we jump back to something that's probably earlier in the Last Supper. But we're getting kind of these little thematic introductions where we're supposed to kind of tie in some of the things that Jesus is saying to the events of the episode. We're getting to digest, because the Last Supper, there's so much content from the Gospels on this small little event. So I totally understand their decision to go this route, because even if they did like a bottle episode where it was just Last Supper, that would be like so much like content to digest, and it also could kind of become a little difficult to make that like dramatic, having Jesus give like these long speeches for like an entire episode. So I think I am generally on board with the idea of breaking things up and allowing us to kind of make these connections by interspersing it throughout the entire season. What are your guys' thoughts on this call, like having them do it in the intros?
I like it. I like the fact that we came up with that, but also I like how they're actually implementing it. They're giving us a really good dramatic little segment that then leads into the rest of the episode. So each, like I thought, especially the second episode's cold open, I'm going to call it, was really, really powerful.
Yep.
And it's just kind of it really just sets the tone for the rest of the episode. Each of the episodes did the same thing.
What are your thoughts, Kyle?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I see you made a really good point there, Kevin, on a good creative reason to do it that way. Um, the one thing you miss out on is having them meet for the Last Supper at the end of the season, in one episode. You know, just having that one solid scene. Dramatically, you know, you could build the tension of the entire season up towards that, and then it's just the one last good time they have together. And there's some good drama that I think you miss out by not having that. But it's a give and take, you know, and it's just which way do you want to tell the story? I'm sure they discussed that at length and came to this idea. And I agree that especially episode 2, that it was a strong cold open.
Yeah, I imagine that we're still gonna get an episode, like, because they're not just gonna like stop right before the Last Supper. So what I'm guessing is that they're gonna keep the actual Last Supper like for the, you know, either final episode or penultimate episode. So we'll get kind of a Last Supper episode. Maybe we'll get like the foot washing scene with that. But we're just kind of interspersing some of the teaching that it would have been difficult to do like all of that on top of the actual supper itself.
Great point.
That's my guess.
Counterpoint: who wouldn't pay $20 to go see Jesus teach the Last Supper for an hour and a half straight? I would, but no, keep it. Yeah, go on. I get it.
I want to make another prediction. I want to say that we are going to get almost all of the same stuff we've seen already, but I think we're going to have each of the disciples is going to have like a little flashback or a little something where like we see a little piece of this, and then it kind of the audio kind of fades away because we heard this before, and then we see them remembering some little moment that happened earlier in their journeys that we may or may not we probably haven't seen. So
kind of like a montage, or not montage, that's the wrong word, but like we'll get like little snippets of this just to like get us back, like, okay, this is the actual sequence of the things that you saw unfold. Or that makes a lot of sense. I will say one of the trade-offs of having these Last Supper cold opens is that you can't do as many of like the, you know, like the Old Testament flashbacks and stuff like that, which to your point, Victor, might have been helpful in episode 2. Like if we could have
I'll go into detail on that.
The temple complex, not, you know, I think that you kind of hinted at this in a message that we had. It might be helpful to if we had seen the temple kind of in its glory before it
100%.
Kind of fell into the state of kind of decay, so that we like appreciate like how far it's kind of fallen.
100%. So I had
that's one of the trade-offs.
Yeah. I thought they could have done that. Well, no. Anyway,
we can move on, and we'll circle back to discussing the temple situation. So let's get into the triumphal entry, which episode 1, that's like the big event, which happens towards the beginning of the episode. What'd you guys think, just in terms of the actual experience of the event? You know, the music, the production value, the crowd, all of that. What are your impressions of the triumphal entry?
Well, I thought it was an epic presentation. I mean, at the very, very beginning when they're just walking up, I thought it was going to be a little low budgety because I didn't see a whole lot of people. Once they got into the city and you really saw the people and you saw the palms, then it became like a really epic kind of moment. I was kind of really excited. I think it's an iconic kind of portrayal of this particular scene that we're going to have.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, so I loved the moment where, you know, Jesus is approaching, and then like the music kicks in, and then I also love how they, you know, then pull him out of the music as he's like kind of having that moment of seeing the blood on the wall. So I liked kind of like Jesus, that we were in kind of Jesus's perspective for a lot of that. I also like before we actually kind of hit the crowds, that we had that moment where I think it was Zebediah, one of the Pharisees, basically is telling Jesus, you know, if you do this, you're probably going to die, basically. So Jesus kind of has that final moment of like, being like where he gets to decide, like, are you going to go through with this? And the question, are you, if you go through with this, you're going to probably die. Like, that's not even a concern to Jesus, because he knows that's part of his whole purpose. So I liked kind of that little setup to it. And then, getting kind of a little bit of his experience. So I mostly enjoyed it.
Yeah, strong point there on us going into Jesus's perspective and that cinematic thing with the blood dripping down the rocks. I won't repeat what you guys said, even though you said a lot of my thoughts. So I'm going to present a possible negative, and I hope that I'm not coming across like I'm just bringing negatives to the show. That won't continue. No. But this is a thought that crossed my mind. I had this feeling, and tell me if you guys agree or disagree, that the show has done a great job portraying Jesus as a human being like us, an exquisite job. And that's how I personally prefer to view Jesus. But maybe have they run it at a cost of a little bit of his regality and power? Because there was something almost a little awkward to me about watching this Jesus receive this triumphal entry, almost like I haven't seen him be enough of that God, if that makes sense. He's more kind of laid back, human, jokey, and I love that stuff, but I don't know. Did you guys feel that way at all?
I actually.
Well, I think. Especially because we have the contrast of House of David going on right now, you get a lot of those more epic. This is a king. This is a mighty warrior kind of feel. Like you get pumped up about the leader. And I think we kind of wanted some of. I think that's probably what you're talking about. I think is that we haven't gotten those moments of like, this is the guy, where we're just pumped and we want him to, and we haven't gotten that, and that should have been leading up to this moment here.
Right, like we got it with Jesus walking on water, but and we've seen his miracles. I feel like a transfiguration or something that it's still. Sometimes it's a little awkward when the divine shows with this Jesus, like later when the voice cries out from the thunder, there's just, I feel like if they went and redid the show, I would just texture this portrayal of Jesus with some more divine, like holy smokes moments, even though we see that with the miracles, there's just some more
spectacle we need.
Exactly. But so that's I don't want to drag on about it. That was the only thing that made it seem slightly awkward to me, but but I still really like the scene and agree with what you guys said regarding the
I think that's like it's an interesting insight into, I feel like, a difference between House of David and The Chosen in terms of kind of their emphasis, where like I think The Chosen really doubles down on kind of the more eminent, the more kind of humble, the more humanist human-like aspect of both of Jesus, but just in general as far as like storytelling, it's constantly kind of giving us experiences, characters who aren't kind of these larger than life figures, but are very relatable to kind of struggles or experiences that we as modern people have. So it's really emphasizing kind of in terms of adaptation, the effort to try to create a bridge between experiences that are relevant and relatable to the audience and the experiences described in Scripture. Whereas I feel like House of David, its kind of major focus is more on actually kind of creating these more larger than life figures, epic experiences. That the whole the company that's producing it is called the Wonder Project. I think that's very intentionally named because they're trying to create this kind of sense of wonder. So I feel like it's just like an interesting difference in emphasis between the two companies, it seems like. where like The Chosen, it has this moment. There's like an epic quality to the moment in terms of like the crowds and the sound and the stuff like that. But definitely in terms of, I agree with you. Like, you know, Jesus is not giving like a strong kind of like powerful vibe. He does kind of come humbly. He comes with this sense of like deep sadness, kind of mixture of emotions, which I think relates to, they're trying to kind of humanize him, not in the way of like ignoring his divinity, but trying to get into the human emotions that he must have been feeling in a moment like this, where he's getting all the celebration, but he's also kind of anticipating what's to come and stuff like that. So,
and just to make it clear, I love that. Like that's how I love that they're emphasizing that. I wouldn't want like an MGM Jesus or, you know, something like that. I love this portrayal. It's just it makes these types of big scenes a little bit less impactful to me without some of the. Anyways, I won't repeat myself.
Well, I agree 100%. I agree 100% with you, Kyle. It's like I think there should be like just sprinkles. Like a couple of scenes need like 20% more grandeur to it. You know, like I think at least once a season we need like the walking on water. I think the walking on water kind of nailed that type of, you know, epic miracle kind of moment where you look at it and you're like wowed by how it looked. And I think this could have been more of a wow moment. Could have had the transfiguration. I still hope we get that in like a flashback, because I think that was a super missed opportunity to show stuff like that, and just to give it some wow. I think the House of David shows that you can ramp it up 20%, and you're not going to lose any of the grandeur, or not the grandeur, but the groundedness of it.
You nailed it, man. Absolutely. Yeah, those two moments you just mentioned, the walking on water and the transfiguration, are two moments in Scripture where Jesus' disciples are terrified of him, or terrified, like fall on their face, you know, and I think some more of that.
Yeah, I wonder if part of this like is related to like the audiences of the two shows. I've just been noticing kind of, I have very limited data. I only have like the data of like my own kind of videos and who's viewing them and stuff like that on YouTube. But it's been interesting to me to see how House of David, my audience that's like interested in that, it tends to be like more male and in general kind of like a little bit younger than my audience that is interested in the Chosen content. Now, obviously, those are kind of just general trends. Like there's plenty of younger people and males, obviously we're all males, who like the Chosen, and you know, vice versa. There's females and older people who like House of David. But it's just like interesting. I wonder if, I don't know if this is where the kind of cause effect arrow goes. Probably more from, you know, the creators of both shows have had kind of their own vision, and maybe kind of the House of David approach of kind of having more of this spectacle, more of this bombast. I feel like speaks to something. I don't know if it's too much to say that like males like really like kind of look for that spectacle. I'm sure females do too, but it just something interesting to think about, that like
Well, I think one of the reasons why The Chosen became popular is because it was able to really dive into the personalities of these people.
Yes. Yep.
I think, you know, and because they didn't have a budget at the beginning, you know, they were kind of scraping money together to put, you know, the limited or the low budget aspect of it at the beginning. And I think if they were able to start over from scratch with the environment the way it is now, I'm sure we'd be getting a lot more bigger moments like that. I think it's just they established a tone and an aesthetic early on, and they're just sticking with it. I mean, you've heard Dallas say, like, you know, we're not gonna go big and spectacle and flashy, and you know, I respect that, but at the same time, I kind of wish we had just a couple of more moments here and there.
Well, now we got AI. You could just throw some terrible AI in there, like House of David, no problem. It's like YouTube video AI, but then you know what I'm talking about, that angel.
And we
discussed it. Definitely got some some negative, or like some people commented that were not super excited, particularly like some people who were digital artists and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, frustrating for them. But I get what happened there, but
right.
we won't get. We got enough to
No.
discuss to get sidetracked. Let's keep moving. So
we're not even in the gate yet.
Yeah. Yeah, little side detour to discuss the mystery watcher that shows up, as Jesus is entering in to Jerusalem. Lots of people watching him. We get little cutouts to Jesse and Veronica, and we see Joanna and Atticus and all these other people. But a lot of people have been speculating or interested in the mystery watcher, who just to catch people up in case you didn't catch him in season 4, there's during the raising of Lazarus, in the background we kind of see this guy it seems to be covering himself up. So this image is from season 4, and when people saw him, they were like, who's that? And like they were trying to figure out who this character is, and he shows up again in season 5, episodes 1 and 2. We see him kind of following Jesus around, following his disciples around, taking notes in a little notebook that he's got. And he also encounters Kaphni and talks to him. And there we get kind of our first like real interaction with him, and get a sense that he's probably positive toward Jesus, I would say, but not wanting to cause issues with Kaphni. So yeah, I'm curious. Do you guys want to do any speculation about who the mystery watcher is, and share your thoughts on the show, including him?
Go ahead, Kyle. You have any thoughts? I've got some.
I have no thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, it's like I think it's clearly one of two people. It's either Luke or it's John Mark. It's going to be one of those two. Because they always show him writing, so that means he's somebody that has written something that we're going to be like, oh wow, that's the guy that wrote XYZ. So it's going to be one of those two. I think it's John Mark, just because it doesn't feel like there's any connection that it could be Luke. Because there is some tradition that the room that the house that the Last Supper was held in was John Mark's mother's house, I believe. So it would make sense that the reason why they're there is like, oh, hey, my mom's got a house. Let me take you over there.
Yep.
Here's the only question I have is, so in that case, he's sneaking around already writing his gospel? Is it, or is he just like taking? It seems
probably not writing like the gospel, but like his notes that he'll
But why
so historically speaking, Mark's gospel is said to be like kind of a compilation of Peter's preaching and his gospel telling, because John Mark was like Peter's assistant. But you could imagine that maybe Mark, had some of his own notes that he used to shape, the things that he heard from Peter. So that would be kind of the theory behind the it being Mark. But what were you gonna say, Kyle?
I don't know why he'd be sneaking around. That's one thing. But that might come clear. It seemed like he was taking notes for some nefarious purpose, like keeping an eye on. I don't know. But the name. This is so dumb. Forgive me, because I don't even know if he was alive at this point or if he was soon after. When did Josephus write Antiquity of the Jews? Was it like?
Yeah. So
I could look that up.
Yeah, the Antiquity of the Jews, that would be later.
That's what I think. He'd be like a baby right now. Or something.
Yeah. I don't know for sure.
He'd be a weird.
Says he was born in AD 37.
Yeah.
He would be a weird inclusion into the Chosen anyway. Okay. Yeah, you guys. I'm sure you guys are right. Yeah.
The only other person I would like put in the mix is Matthias, because so in the book of Acts, after Judas has committed suicide, the disciples have to pick a replacement for Judas so that they can still have 12 disciples. And so there are a couple of guys, and the one who eventually gets picked is Matthias. And kind of one of the prerequisites for being a disciple is that you kind of have been a witness to Jesus's ministry. And we really haven't had other male kind of witnesses to the ministry of Jesus. So that would be kind of the argument for Matthias. But like you said, Victor, I think probably the strongest case is for Mark, just because they have emphasized him writing. I could see Luke as a possibility, although I think it's most likely that Luke kind of came a little bit later into belief and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm sure they'll create some sort of storyline to explain why he's sneaking around. Most likely, maybe he, is worried, like maybe he has people close to him that are against Jesus, and so he doesn't want to be seen kind of around Jesus, or I'm sure that they've got some sort of explanation.
Even if I do think it's weird that he's sneaking around, if he's Mark or Luke, I think it's Chosen could still make that a storyline. Like he's hired to keep tabs and report, and through that process comes to faith.
That's true. Yeah,
because he's not a believer right now. He's just curious, or he's just he's still learning at this point.
Yeah, I know I've seen some people speculate Paul or Saul at this point.
Right.
I find that unlikely. Like I feel like if it was Saul, he would be much more like he'd have a more visceral reaction to Jesus. Like I don't get the sense that he is like strongly against Jesus at this point.
He'd be with Kaphne. If he was in this, he would be with Kaphne at this point.
Yeah,
but he would have been in Tarsus anyway around now.
Yeah, probably. Like I mean, we aren't told. So they could imagine Paul back into the story, but I think it's unlikely. I think the way that Paul describes his experiences in the Gospels, I feel like he would mention if he had seen like Jesus on the cross or kind of during Holy Week and stuff like that.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense.
It gives the impression that like his first actual encounter with Jesus is on the road to Damascus. So I find that probably
that would be such an overstep of the Chosen to suggest that Paul bore witness to Jesus's ministry and crucifixion.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fun little way to keep people engaged, and I imagine that they'll use his character to do something interesting in terms of exploring kind of. He's kind of like a new point of view character. So like we've had all of these characters that we've known for so long and who are already very familiar with Jesus, whereas he provides an opportunity to give someone who has kind of fresh eyes to encounter Jesus during this time period. So I'm interested to see what they do with him, but we can move on from that. Let's talk about the baddies. So like Caiaphas, Pilate, even Herod gets like a more kind of significant interaction in episode 2. What are your guys' thoughts on some of the antagonists? Whenever I interview someone who plays kind of a more antagonistic figure in The Chosen, they always insist that they are not villains. So we won't call them the villains because I know definitely Sean Sharma, like when we discuss Shmuel, he does not want to he definitely wants to kind of see it from the perspective of Shmuel is doing things kind of as best as he can within his own framework. So, but what'd you guys think?
I loved Herod. I think he gives a great performance.
Yep.
He's dripping with villainy, and I love it. One of my favorite scenes out of either episode was him and Caiaphas having that long political discourse. But some people might not enjoy that. I thought that was some of the best writing that I've seen in the show. Yep. The way that Herod kind of toys and plays around with him and like weaves it because you kind of get this opinion of Herod before this being kind of a dope, or not, maybe not a dope, but just somebody who's just in the position and drunk all the time and just doesn't really have any ability. But he showed he's really a smart, conniving politician in that scene. So I really like them too. Pilate, Kevin, I read your blog. I read you thought he gives. I hate to hate on people. I won't give directly. I will say sometimes the acting with some of these cast members is not the most believable to me. but I won't mention names because I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I will say Herod and Caiaphas, I thought they gave great performances.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on Caiaphas and Herod. Like that exchange that they have, I feel like it's so rich in terms of, like you said, they're kind of like weaving in and out and like kind of trying to catch each other. And then, I love also some of the kind of world building of like them just kind of like referencing things and Greco-Roman culture, just to like put us in not just like the Jewish culture, which the show has done a lot so far, but also remind us like, oh yeah, there's also all these things going on in Greek and Roman poetry and art and things like that these more kind of cultured figures would have been aware of. So I thought that was great. Yeah, I agree with you. Like Herod in season 4, like I was kind of like, yeah, he didn't really do too much, especially, episode 1, he, like you said, he was like kind of drunk the whole episode. And then we got a little bit of him towards the end, but this was like our real, like first real, like taste of like Herod's personality and his skill. And so I was really intrigued by that. I also liked Caiaphas, like that he really seems like, like sincere, even though he's like sincere, but also cynical.
Right.
Like he's, he thinks that God basically wants him to be cynical and be pursuing after Jesus this way. So I found that like an interesting kind of contradiction or paradox in his character.
Right.
I will jump in and say that for me, the biggest whiff that the show has made, and I don't think it's going to be able to recover from it in this angle, is the casting of Pilate. It's just it doesn't work for me,
bro. I tried to shy away from saying it.
And it was like I was watching this, and I'm like, I watched both episodes twice. I went back a second time, and like the second time, I'm like, what bugs me about this so much? And I finally figured it out. And I hope you guys will be able to unsee this, but Pilate is if a young Martin Short was playing Pilate.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just can't. Like, I cannot.
But without any of that Martin Short zip.
Right. It's just to me it just doesn't work. It just needed. I see what they were going for, and I see what they're trying to do. I just, I could see somebody like Jesse Eisenberg playing the same character and giving a better vibe of what I think they're going for. It just, to me, I'm a little worried for whenever we get to the really important moments that it's going to feel more like history of the world.
Dude. That's such a that's so Martin Short, dude. That's just perfect.
I apologize, but I gotta call it. It's like
you don't need to apologize for having an opinion. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's really funny. He's not
the other things though. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was sorry to interrupt. It's like it is hard to imagine this Pilate giving the conversation that Pilate in Scripture does with Jesus, and like it seems like a different character. I don't know.
Well, it's like in the video that they were showing beforehand, you got to see him. What I'm guessing is a little bit more of his normal personality, and I'm like, I wish we would have had that rather than this more kind of Romanized kind of over the top kind of portrayal. I don't know. It's just he needs to be about 30% more like the way Herod's being portrayed. Just a little bit more, kind of not completely in over his head, but just kind of finished up your point. It's like, I thought even though I thought that whole exposition scene went on way too long, it wasn't at the fault of either the Caiaphas or the Herod actors, who I think both, they delivered all of that stuff. You got to see the kind of almost like a tennis match going back and forth.
Yeah.
Each one of them had a little bit of something that they were holding over the other one and had the upper hand. And I thought it was well done. It just could have been about 5 minutes shorter.
Oh, dude, I think that could have been that. I think that what you just said could be true of the whole show. Like every episode of every every show.
But it's
said.
like all the stuff we got in there was like very. I was like, well, we needed to hear that. We needed to hear that. I was just like, could there have been a more, dynamic way of presenting some of that information where it wasn't just. And there were so many of these kind of conversations within the same
Right.
episode. Like we just had a long discussion. Now we got another long discussion. And now we got another discussion.
And they're all on the same subject. What do we do about Jesus of Nazareth? Do we kill him? Oh, you couldn't say that. What if we just kill Lazarus? Yeah, we get a lot of the same point, counterpoint. Yeah.
I think also like part of this is maybe a consequence of like the show hasn't been able to work with, with Caiaphas or with Herod for as long. And so they're like wanting to like backfill some of the story that they could have actually shown if they had been able to, get into depicting Herod earlier in the show or depicting even Pilate earlier in the show. But because we haven't had like as much time with them, there's kind of this pressure to like, oh yeah, we have to kind of explain some, the situation of like Caiaphas's father-in-law, and we have to, explain kind of Herod's perspective on Jesus and all these different things, which I get why they, weren't able to bring them in earlier because of, the show was still kind of growing and didn't have quite as much resources at that point, back in like season 2 or season 3 as it does now. But I do think that that's probably one factor that's involved is that, they're kind of having to do more like telling as opposed to showing with some of the stuff.
Well, another factor is that we're spending a whole season in 5 days, 5.5
I know.
days.
I thought that too.
And it's like there's just not a lot of stuff that's going to happen dynamically that makes for interesting TV.
That's true.
That's like it's like here you need to. This is a good place to put. We're raising the stakes. You couldn't have raised the stakes last season. Nobody would be remembering, that conversation that they would have had where it would have said, "Oh, we told you how, dangerous it was going to be for Jesus, back then. You needed it here, so that way we go forward." From just like a construction standpoint, I understand it. It's just,
Can I ask you? This seems like a good time. I had this question I was going to ask you guys. And I think it speaks to what you're saying here on the construction of the season and us, and the Chosen having to fill a lot of screen time. This is one thing that I'll just ask you. Okay, can I ask you what are your 3 favorite characters, 3 or 5 favorite characters, not just this season but in the Chosen as a whole?
Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
Matthew.
Yes.
And obviously Jesus, not just because it's the right thing to say, but it's because he's clearly the most dynamic character. But
totally.
I think who else would be.
Well, those 3, I think most people would say.
Yeah.
Right, and you can add a couple other. Kevin, do
Peter,
you have any other?
Maybe Peter.
Yeah.
Gaius.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we can go on. Like I probably would have said several of the same. Yeah.
There's a few that could compete, but I would say Matthew, Mary Magdalene, are two fan favorites. Peter, Jesus, of course, Gaius. I really like. I'm blanking on his name, but the Roman, who we don't know. He's like a detective
Atticus.
Atticus. Sorry,
Atticus.
I would have remembered Atticus had I thought of it for one more second. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Now, how many of the main storylines of the season have anything to do with any of those characters?
Yeah.
And I feel like that was an issue last season too.
Exactly.
And if you're gonna fill an entire season with Holy Week and you don't have that many scriptures you have scriptures, but not enough to fill up like 8 or 9 hours, however long the season goes. Why not create some storylines for some of these people, for some of your favorite characters? You can invent stuff, you can have interpersonal drama. You can create new stakes, new storylines but Matthew has nothing to do. He's been relegated to the sidelines completely. Peter has this like throwaway plot line, like comic relief sort of about him learning to preach, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything. You know, Mary Magdalene, she has.
But that's another side effect of, I mean, it's like we're at a point in the scripture where there's not going to be a lot of deviation or a lot of extra stuff. It's like there's points that everybody, like even people that aren't, you know, regular churchgoers, they know the big points that are coming up, you know, this season and next season. And you got to hit those or else they're going to be wondering what's going on. Kind of like with House of David, it's like you have to start off with Goliath because that's who everybody knows. You know, these are the points that you're going to have to hit, and there's just not a lot of wiggle room where it's like, you know, in between this event and another event, we're going to have another whole thing where, you know, Matthew and somebody else is getting in a big argument, but then they got to have that all resolved by the time, you know. I mean, it's just kind of hard to construct all of those things and wedge them into this 1 week of time that show has moved towards.
I get where Kyle's coming from in terms of like the way that you navigate those events. You can have some of these more like favorite characters be our point of view into these bigger events and like show the significance of them through the perspective of these characters. Just like that's kind of the approach of season 1, especially. I feel like as the show has moved along, we've lost a little bit of kind of the focus that season 1 is super focused in terms of like those characters are our point of view characters. Like there are other people who are on the screen, but we're really, you know, Peter, Matthew, Mary Magdalene, like those, and Nicodemus, like those are the characters who their storylines, all the different events that are kind of prescribed in the Gospels are like shaped around these different characters. Whereas I do agree with you as the show has moved along, and you know this is probably like in part. I don't like to speculate too much, but like when you've got like all this huge cast and you're wanting to, you know, keep all these actors involved and keep them on board, you know, it's not really fun for an actor to just be kind of relegated to being like background actor with a name who kind of occasionally gets a line. Like so, you know, you're wanting to keep all these different actors kind of involved in the storyline. But I do think that sometimes it gets like a little too diluted. And I agree with you, Kyle, that I could see it. It might have been helpful to really ground things in just like a few of those favorite characters a little bit more. Like we get a little bit of that with like John and Mary in episode 1 and 2, but like even that they like I feel like could have been like a little more present and a little more active. They're more just kind of like seeing different events, and like we get like some check-ins with them.
Well, so Thomas is the only one who still has an unresolved plot kind of going forward. He's got the most interesting story. They're definitely giving him enough airtime to play out all of that stuff, and that's kind of like exactly what you're talking about. It's like everybody should have had something like that, but we kind of resolved most of the other people's big conflicts prior to getting here, to where this is the only one that's still kind of ongoing from the previous season.
Right. So
out of anybody, I feel like I really wish that they had kept Mary Magdalene. Like they'd found a way to kind of keep her storyline ongoing. I feel like after season 2, I mean, she has a significant role in terms of like starting to like recognize kind of the signs of what's going on with Jesus, but there's no real like trajectory there. She's just kind of in a passive role.
I mean, she's the only one. She's the only one that knows what's going on. She's like the only one that sees what's happening with Jesus and is kind of intuiting that there's something going on with him. So she doesn't really have a trajectory. She's just noticing. She's becoming more of the glorious Mary Magdalene that tradition knows her.
Yeah, I feel like there's a shoo-in storyline for her in this episode or in this season, dealing with forgiveness. Where what if she sees that Roman soldier from season 1, episode 1 at the
Mm.
temple? Or there, what if she comes face to face with some of these past traumas, and that's gnawing at her in the midst of all this stuff going on with Jesus? Yeah.
That'd be perfect.
That'd be
That's
really interesting.
brilliant. That's brilliant.
Perfect. But in the vacuum of these lovable characters having these storylines, other lesser interesting characters are getting a lot of screen time, or we're getting redundant scenes somewhat. I will actually start saying good things about The Chosen before long. Trust me. Okay, sorry.
I just want to say real quick. I just want to say it's like the Chosen is a big boy now. It is not a 5-year-old
right, exactly
that needs to be coddled and only good things said about it. It is a show that is worth the deep dive and the nitpicking or the taking it seriously. I think it's worth it. So we shouldn't feel bad about it.
Give it the respect.
I mean, like,
need to be.
I feel like I've from at least since like season 2, like I've been pretty free and like offering criticism, and that hasn't stopped Dallas from like reaching out and us having a good relationship. So yeah, I don't feel like the creators of the show are like, oh no, like someone didn't like something in our show. Like, I think Dallas has a pretty thick skin, especially all the controversy that they've had to put up with. So
I do this in my day job too. I'm on a marketing team, and every time I give somebody a note, I'm so apologetic for it. It's a weakness of mine, so I'll cut it out. And Dallas Jenkins, I'm coming for you specifically.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving. So yeah, let's talk about the temple. So we got into this a little bit, but Victor, do you want to give us more on your thoughts on the depiction of the temple? And
well, it's like it's one of the things that kind of bugged me the first time I saw it, and then the second time I spent a lot of time like, what is it that I'm missing? It's like, because I know why Jesus is upset at that, but the show I don't think gave us anything to make us be with him. It's like we never did see it. My solution would have been have a flashback to some previous time when the temple was exactly like it was supposed to be, when there's singing going on and there's no stuff being sold, so you see it in its pristine glory, because it's like everything that we were shown looks just like a marketplace. We've seen them walking through marketplaces for the entire show with people selling stuff, and there's animals, and there's that's never come across as anything bad, but yet now these same images we're supposed to be like outraged at when it looks just like everything else we've seen so far. It's just like, oh, it's another guy selling birds. It's like, I don't get what the big deal is. I think we needed, this is what it looks like when it's not that, so that way when we do see it, we're just as shocked and outraged at what it has turned into as Jesus is.
Let me pitch you on like a version of what they could have done with that. Like, I wonder if they could have almost given us like in Jesus's perspective, like he can like see like the temple like as it once was, because God,
like a little flash, like instead of a dark flash or dark vision, a bright vision of what it is. That'd have been good.
Yeah, and so then like we see for him like how, like why he's so frustrated, because he actually knows what it once was and what it was meant to be, and then like that really emphasizes not just for like objectively the change, but kind of subjectively, like that he has had to see it fall from its heights to where it has come. Yeah, that could have been like a cool way they could have done it.
Yep.
Yeah, Kyle, do you have any other thoughts on kind of depiction of the temple? We'll get into the cleansing, but
yeah, no, you guys nailed it. I have more thoughts on the cleansing, but I don't want to take away.
Yeah, let's keep moving then. Yeah, Jesus' vision, destruction of the temple. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
It's pretty stark.
Yeah,
I liked it.
We saw almost all of that in the trailer, so we kind of have had thoughts about it already, and this kind of just
this was one of those scenes though where like it was fun to see in theaters. Like it was very explosive and dark.
It's in the context of the rest of the show, it is pretty alarming because you've seen Roman soldiers from season 1, and they haven't been like this.
Yeah,
they've been oppressors, but not like horrible oppressors. That's how they've been depicted. We haven't seen them taking people from their homes or burning down buildings or anything, and then they're kind of a sleeping giant threat through most of the show, and then to see them awakened and burning the whole temple like callously, it did have an effect on me.
Yeah.
Also, it's just crazy to see an event like that you have read about and thought about since you were a kid. You learn about the destruction of the temple, and then to see it depicted like that viscerally on screen in a movie theater, it's pretty cool.
So historically in 70 AD, Josephus says like 1 million people, 1 million Jews died in the siege of Jerusalem, and like 100,000 more were taken captive or sold into slavery or whatever. So very horrific event. So I like that they Jesus is gonna reference the destruction of the temple, or like that. That's an important theme throughout Holy Week. So I was not happy like to see it, but like I'm glad that they, because like sometimes that doesn't get included in depictions of Holy Week and stuff, because it can be kind of complicated talking about kind of the significance of that. People are less aware of it because it's not directly described in the Bible, but I mean Jesus prophesies it, but it's not. We don't have like a historical account of the destruction of the temple in the Bible itself. We do have it in Josephus and other things like that. But yeah, I like that they did that, and also how that is Jesus sees that, and that's kind of the thing that sets him off and causes him to go get his whip. So he's like kind of giving a last ditch effort to challenge the people and warn them, like, if you don't turn back and continue to desecrate my Father's house, and you continue to reject me as the Messiah, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get driven out of the temple. I even like how with get into the cleansing scene, I like that a little bit gets like caught on fire, because that kind of like connects it to the destruction of the temple that we see with these flames that are out of control. It's a little hint of how Jesus is giving them kind of this prophetic picture. If you don't turn back, if you don't change and repent, then this is what's going to happen. You're going to get driven out of the temple. It's going to get on fire. Things are going to get crazy. So
wait, Kevin, am I getting this? I can be kind of dense sometimes. All right. So it's probably obvious in theaters. You're saying that Jesus's vision of the temple destruction was a motivating factor for him to cleanse the temple?
So the Bible doesn't like necessarily describe Jesus having like a separate vision experience or whatever.
But I mean, is that what you're saying The Chosen is doing?
I think so. That's how I interpret it, because it's one of the factors. So we see him looking at the temple. Definitely he's bothered by the greed and the exploitation, Gentiles kind of being excluded and stuff like that. But as he's looking down on the temple, he then has that visionary experience of it being destroyed, and then immediately after that, he goes home. He gets the whip and constructs it out of the bridle. So, and in the Bible, a lot of interpreters believe that the cleansing of the temple, part of the significance of it is that it is kind of a prophetic enactment. Jesus is basically giving people a picture of what's going to happen if they don't repent. We get kind of some the cursing of the fig tree is another one. Like he in the Gospel of Mark, the cursing of the fig tree kind of bookends the cleansing of the temple, and Jesus kind of is more explicit about that being a picture of he came to Jerusalem looking for fruit, he didn't find fruit, and so it's cursed. And then in Jesus's his lament over Jerusalem, he says, oh, that you knew the things that made for peace and knew the time of your visitation, but instead you're going to be surrounded, and not one stone is going to be left on top of another. So there definitely seems to be the sense in the Gospels that part of what Jesus is doing with the cleansing of the temple is related to his sense that if Jerusalem kind of stays on its current path, by rejecting Jesus, like the peaceful king and Messiah, that's going to leave them open to instead following, the zealots and kind of the non-peaceful means of leadership. So I think that's involved with like the Chosen's not being like super explicit about that, but I think it's kind of hinting at it.
Oh man, that's when you've overthought stuff too much. Jesus goes in there with a whip. He overturns tables. He tells you exactly what he's talking about. Why do you need to put all this prophecy in there? He's handling business. He tells you what the deal is. I don't know. I wouldn't have included that as a motivation for Jesus in this show. Especially screenwriting perspective. You really don't want to muddy things up with multiple layered motivations for a big action like that. It's just easier to digest if it's just the one. Or simpler, but that's just my opinion. Other people could disagree.
If they're going to include like more of the stuff that Jesus does throughout Holy Week, like you can't really avoid getting into the destruction of Jerusalem, because like it's kind of an ever-present theme throughout Holy Week. And so like I'm for them including it, but I get what you're saying. I think you could just see it. I don't think you necessarily, it's like an inescapable constant thing that you have to assume that Jesus is like trying to force it all. Like they're not explicit about that at all. You could just think that Jesus has this vision, and I don't know kind of how you tie that in, but I don't know.
I think this shows that a little bit of spectacle really helps cement some images and stuff in your head. So that's why I think they can just sprinkle some more of this kind of stuff throughout the show. Will help. I don't think it'll hurt it or devalue it or anything. So
yeah. Okay. We also Victor and I, we totally predicted that they were going to turn the bridle into the whip.
You guys.
When we looked at the trailer way back, Victor was like, looks like he's like turning something, like he's got something leather and he's making this whip out of something. And I don't know if you had the bridle on your mind, but I was like, oh, the bridle.
You added that. So
I love that little detail, how they've kind of woven the bridle into the past few seasons. And
literally
also like it's a cool little like theological tool for them to do, because the bridle was from the first Exodus, apparently belonged to David. Jesus, puts it on the donkey as he is initiating the second Exodus. That's one way that the gospel authors look at his what he did on the cross, is that he was bringing about a new Exodus from slavery. And part of that is him challenging kind of the temple, which in a way, if you think about it, positions the temple leaders almost like in the position of like Pharaoh, which is kind of interesting kind of thing. So I just wanted to give Victor some points for kind of initially suspecting that, and drawing attention to that theme. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts, or we can keep moving on.
Victory
this
for
episode is just this is just a victory lap for me, this episode tonight. So
right, I thought it was an awesome choice. It was cool, it was sick. We can move on. Whatever you think.
Do you guys want to get into Peter's preaching at all? If we don't have to, it wasn't, like you said, it was kind of a comedic relief.
It's a great screenshot of him though.
This is from the trailer, just because I made use of what was easily accessible.
I think very much we got to give him something to do. Hey, what if we do this? That's just what it felt like.
Totally. My friend has this joke when you're writing a script and you forget about a certain character, and then you're like, oh shoot, but let's have Ben. We'll have him go to the store. You just kind of like, how do we take care of Ben? Have him go to the store. That's kind of like this.
I do like. I imagine that one of the reasons they're doing it is because they want to like plant seeds for the whole that Acts like spinoff show, and so they want to have a picture of Peter as like bumbling around in his preaching, so that then later on he can really wow people when he in the book of Acts where it says how like people were amazed by his preaching even though he was someone unlearned. But
well, that's something I don't. I'm coming on strong here. I don't think you do that here. I think you do that, but Peter should have been bumbling from the beginning. He's bumbling in Scripture. Yeah, that's like a part of his character, but they didn't do that with this Peter. He's a cool guy. He's like a cool natural leader, masculine dude. Well, I think he was masculine in Scripture too, but he was just kind of like a brute fisherman, uneducated dude.
I was noticing how great his hair was in these episodes. It was like, I was like, that is some awesome hair he had. It's like flowing and waves, like one of the Bee Gees in the 70s. I mean, that was like.
They got their hair and makeup budget now.
Okay, got a lot to get to, so we're gonna keep moving. Thomas and Coffney, you guys want to get into that at all? I don't really have like a whole lot of thoughts. I do like that they humanized Coffney a little bit, like had him kind of have that little noble moment in the flashback where he, he's kind of generously providing more than his old friend could probably afford. And he's even like, I actually don't know if he's still a good man, but might as well, like, I'm going to remember who he was and honor that.
Well, I think he represents people that are righteously wrong. They're very sincerely, passionately believe, but they are dead wrong. I think he's representing those kinds of people that, we got to remember them. They're not bad people. They're just making very, very bad decisions.
Yeah.
Good take. Yeah, I thought it was a believable part of the story, and I like that flashback too.
Yeah. Keep moving. John and Mary Magdalene. They're kind of like our interpreters for the different events. Like they're kind of seeing things and kind of cueing us into things that we might miss. Like, did you guys have any thoughts on their role or?
Kind of like what we talked about earlier, they're not really being given much to do except just kind of comment and become more of the people we know that they become in relation to Jesus. There's nowhere they can go away. They just have to be getting closer to Jesus. She's got to be one of the first people to see him come out of the tomb and then John's the one that Jesus loves. So it's like, they can't go away. They can't do anything different to take them away. And then 3 days later, they're back to being, right on top. So they're just kind of stuck in that limbo, I think, which is fine. They're doing a great job at it. It's just not a lot of drama to what they're doing.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get into this more, like, we've still got several episodes, and like at the middle episodes, I have less of a sense of like what like there are plenty of like kind of teaching moments and stuff like that, but I have less of a sense of kind of the structure of what's going to go on for the middle episodes of the season. So like, I guess what I was going to say is like, I kind of want them to like be trying to convince some people who are oblivious among the disciples, like, so we get like at least a little bit of conflict and agency from them. And so like, maybe we'll get that in the rest of the season. Like maybe we're just kind of setting up that they understand, and then we'll get them like trying to get the other disciples to understand and getting pushed back. That's the only thing that I guess I would like to see. But we'll have to wait to see whether we actually get it. Let's keep moving. Okay. Cleansing, big moment. Kyle, you said that you had some thoughts on it. Do you want to share any of those?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I like the scene.
Mm-hmm.
I would give it a C plus or a B minus. And here I'll tell you what I liked and what I didn't like. What I liked was Jesus did seem furious. They didn't shy away from that. It was alarming seeing him like that. He had a lot of conviction and power, and they didn't try to soften it. He goes. He's got that whip. He's cracking it at people. He's like pushing people over. He pushes the table, but he pushes people over too, even people that you like.
Like the Tamar's love interest, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really liked that they went for it. I just appreciate that about The Chosen in general, even though I don't always agree on the plot points. They go for it, So I really enjoyed that. They had fire, like you said, some stuff caught on fire. It's like, oh my gosh, Jesus is really wreaking havoc. And then he looks furious at Caiaphas at the end. It looks like he's about to attack him, So all of that stuff I really liked. The stuff I didn't like, and I won't take too long here, from a story perspective and an execution perspective. From a story perspective, I would have shown that the people didn't like this temple setup and knew you got a little bit that they knew they were being robbed, but even Jesus's disciples are just kind of like, hey, this is how you do it. You go over here, they're going to upsell you, but this is the cost of doing business. This is how we do it. And this is how we do it over here. I would have liked to have seen more poor people get taken advantage of. Truly shown how predatory this practice was, and that the people didn't like it. That the people like dreaded it. And then when Jesus does that, I would have had him not be scaring the common people, but like I would have had the common people reacting like maybe scared, but also like finally, like yes. Like somebody's actually doing something about this, to get, I would have preferred that. And then just from a filmmaking execution standpoint, I think they could have used an action director, because it was very hit your mark, like safety first. And I agree, safety first, but it was like, okay, hit your mark, 3, 2, 1, whip. Walk to the next spot, say your line, 3, 2, 1, push over. It wasn't fluid. It would have been better, in my opinion, if Jesus was like roaring up to stand, throwing over the table, yelling a line out, turning around, going to the next one, bang, 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 instead of very methodical. Almost felt like a stage play from one station to the next. So those are my notes on the cleansing scene.
Yeah, I definitely like your point about the poor people like really getting a little bit, and this kind of goes to Victor, your point as well. Like we needed to invest a little bit more in the corruption of the temple, so that that we're, even if there aren't people there that are cheering it on, like that we as the audience are cheering it on. I mean, you could actually have people cheering it on in King of Kings, like this is like a silent movie version of the Gospels way back, like black and white and stuff. One of the things that they do with this scene is after Jesus is like taking on the temple, then like a huge crowd comes, and they're like wanting to, Judas is at the head of the crowd, and he's wanting to crown Jesus king, and like that's the moment when so that you could create this as a where Jesus like taking on the authorities gets like a mob behind,
right,
to crown him, and he's having to like deal with that as well as kind of take on the temple authorities or whatever.
When he's staring Caiaphas down at the end, the crowd should have been like chanting his name like they were at the triumphal entry or something,
Yeah, that could have been a cool element if they really got Jesus as kind of a populist figure almost,
right,
or at least the people see him that way, and then they get disappointed when he starts saying you should pay your taxes and not be taking violent revolution against Rome. It would be a way to kind of play on the sense that they are thinking that he's going to be this, this king who is really taking on Rome and even taking on kind of the corrupt authorities in the temple. And that would also kind of heighten his the situation with Caiaphas and the conflict that they're dealing with, because like if he's getting this mob, like what are we going to do? Like we can't arrest him because he has this whole mob that's wanting to, that he's actually restraining from making things worse or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that being an interesting approach.
Yeah, the way this is going to sound super, super harsh. So just commenters, like, lay off the keyboards for a second here. This is like the way that they execute it, with the people running around in terror and the stores being flipped over, stuff is burning, and this what appears to the people to be this madman running around. In our culture, in our society, the audience might psychologically connect that with like some mass shooter vibes. If it's not clear that the people are behind him doing this, for our, in our society, with everything that we've been through and experienced, that could come across, it could evoke some of those feelings.
And I do like the idea that, the actions that Jesus is taking wouldn't be supported by everyone, and not even just by like the temple authorities, but I like the idea of them humanizing one of the sellers, so that we're like, oh, like, he's just a normal guy. He's generous, or at least he's he's not trying to be horrible or whatever, but he's getting negatively impacted. Like, I like that they did some of that humanizing, but I agree with you that there's a danger of doing that too much, so that we're not like super clear on like how bad the situation is and why Jesus has to take kind of these drastic steps to address it. That makes sense.
I think we could have taken some time away from, like, Peter's preaching to do some of the stuff you guys are talking about, where it's just kind of, this is important to set this stuff up. More important, I think, than setting up Peter in a show that's not going to air for another 6 years probably. Let's get this set up right now.
No, that makes sense. Okay. We are supposed to also be hitting on House of David, so we're gonna probably go through it. I know we've already been here for quite a while, but we're gonna try to hit.
That's just the time. That's the times we live in.
Yeah.
Dude, I love House of David. I'm sorry I hadn't seen it sooner. I would have hit you up to be on the shows. But I love the show.
Yeah. Well, let's before we get into kind of piece by piece of the episode. Yeah, Kyle, do you want to share your thoughts on the show in general, and we can also talk about thoughts on the episode in general?
Yeah, I was shocked by the quality of it, and I really enjoyed how like The Chosen, they go for it. I won't cover a lot of the same ground you have, but they didn't shy away from Samuel hacking up King Agag or whatever his name is. I love the casting of David. He's one of my favorite protagonists I've seen in anything in a while. I love his confidence, his heart, his romance, his fight. And you and I have emailed some, and you've posted on your blog a lot about how they kind of shy away from putting him too close to the fire. Like, some of his problems are solved a little easy. But I root for him like crazy. Him and Mikal. Is Mikal her name? Yeah. The characters are, by and large, textured. The performances are good. Samuel's an awesome character. So I'm riveted by the show. I think it's I love the boldness of making Goliath a full-blown Nephilim, and the angle that they took on that. They just go for it, man. I love that. And I have one massive problem, but I don't know if you want me to say it now or in a little bit. Okay, here's my one gigantic literal problem. I love Goliath. And I think everybody loves Goliath. Everybody loves Goliath. He's wonderful. He's this big, fun-loving dude who jokes around with his brothers, lives in a cave, doesn't have a life of his own because his mother, whom he loves, is trying to protect them. He gets deceived into thinking that this army killed his mother. And he loves his mother. Of course he wants to get revenge her. That's the times that he lives in. But there's nothing evil or mean about him. He's joyous when she takes him to see the Philistines at Gath. He's playing around with those other soldiers. He doesn't actually kill or hurt anybody. It's like he's playing with his friends. It's like he's finally out of his cage. And now he's going to war with the Philistines. And I'm supposed to be happy when I see that rock pierce his head. All I can think of is like, no, like this is the one time when I hope that they change scripture, because what I want is for David and Goliath to become buddies on a road trip together. Those two characters would have a blast together, and you know it. Like, you can see their personalities and the way they would be like Princess Bride-ish type dynamic. So I've been racking my mind with how they could have made Goliath unlikable, because I do think giants on screen are fundamentally likable. And I think they would have had to make him arrogant, probably bad to women. I think they would have had to do something like that, like showing him be bad to women or something to really make me not like him. But the way they chose to go is just to make him the most adorable, wonderful character ever. And I'm like dreading watching the next episode, because we're going to see David cut his head off.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt. Okay, well,
there's not a lot of runway for us to not like him.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts.
I agree with you. I like that they've like humanized him a little bit, and like you said, like gotten us to like him. But yeah, there is definitely a cost to that in terms of like taking one of the aspects of the biblical story is that like he's just kind of this like monster, portraying him as a giant in the biblical story. We're able to just be like, yeah, kill him. It's like having like Nazis on screen or whatever.
Right.
Like, it kind of like removes that complexity to violence that we often feel if we are seeing more people that are more gray or whatever fighting with each other. So I definitely agree with you that there's a cost to that. That it turns it more.
But it kind of fits because the whole story of David and his era is a bunch of people that are good guys that make bad decisions, and there's things that happen. There's a lot of morality issues. So I can see it doing the opposite with Goliath, and I don't think it's a bad thing that we're going to feel bad.
Yeah,
that the villain gets killed.
Yeah, actually, as you're saying that, Victor, they, like you said, David's story, we've got lots of good characters, but we're given a lot of insight into their flaws and their complex motivations and failures and things like that. But we also see like some characters that in another version of the story would be just like villainous. For example, Abner, Saul second in command. Even in the biblical account, we get the sense that he's got kind of this nobility, and so like when he eventually gets killed by David's second in command later on in the story, we're like, oh shoot, like poor Abner, even though he's on the opposite side of the war from David. That makes me think that that's part of what they're doing, is they're trying to take that kind of complexity that we see in a lot of the other characters in the book of Samuel, and they're kind of reading that back into Goliath. So that's interesting, but I get what you're saying, Kyle, like that there is like a cost to that, making that choice in the adaptation. So
yeah, it's gonna be like watching a dog get killed on screen or something. It's just not gonna be fun. I love him.
Yeah,
but they got time to let him kill somebody we like, so that way we're happy.
That'll work.
You give him somebody.
Yeah, if he bites somebody's head off or something.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
But this
I
is easily
can-
the best Goliath. This is Goliath
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
from here on out.
Yeah. I love that they made him as big as they made him.
Yeah, initially, Victor knows, like, I was like having like some hesitation about it, but it's grown on me as the show's gone along, and yeah, I think it was the right choice. Yeah.
You think it was the right choice to make him so lovable, Kevin?
Oh no, to make him huge.
Oh yeah,
like
right on.
It definitely
Heck
like
yeah.
emphasized the type of story that they're going for, which is like, Bible meets Lord of the Rings is definitely like the pitch for this show, and like a short pithy statement.
And you know what? The Bible was the OG of those stories. Lord of the Rings probably took it from the Bible. All of these epic.
Tolkien's definitely, he translated one of the biblical books, like for the Jerusalem Bible or whatever. So he was very like aware of the biblical stories, and definitely like the arrows are going both ways. Like the Bible influenced Tolkien a lot, but Tolkien's definitely influencing how John Irwin and stuff are bringing some of the biblical characters and things like that. So,
well, dude, I like House of David a lot more than those Lord of the Rings movies. So you can hate me all you want. That's where I stand.
I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. But we won't get into arguing over that. Let's get into the actual show so we don't go on forever. So with this episode, we got we'll get into David's storyline, but David's one big chunk of the storyline, and then the other big chunk of the storyline is at the battlefront with Saul and Jonathan, and then we also have kind of a minor storyline with Michal and Mirab and Ahinoam back in Gibeah. So let's start at the battlefront. So we start off. Saul is more or less feeling better from kind of all the darkness that he's been in. We get so this is totally Lord of the Rings influence here. This scene that I've got on the screen, totally taken from the Two Towers. One of the lines that he gives is almost verbatim from the Two Towers.
I didn't know that.
If you're a big Tolkien or like Lord of the Rings and Tolkien fan like me, there's another line or another scene too that that's very like definitely like an Easter egg. But
do I need to start liking the Lord of the Rings now?
Maybe, I don't know. Saul initially he's doing better, but then Goliath comes out in all of his terrible glory, and Saul like has another like terrible vision, falls off his horse, and the little vial that Besai the spiritist used to kind of like keep his symptoms at bay basically breaks, and he falls into darkness. What'd you guys think of Saul's storyline?
Lucky coincidence that you got that vision. Yeah. No, go on, Victor. Sorry.
As I say, this is like, we had some slower episodes earlier in the season, but I think all of that sets up scenes like this, where these kind of scenes really hit pretty as hard as they want them to hit.
Yeah,
and setting up stuff further on too. It's just kind of, this is a good payoff of all the stuff we've had earlier, leading up to now.
Yeah. I like the scene. It's complicated because that people in his army would probably think he was just being a coward. Some of them would. Some of them think he was mad, but he's legit. He's legit tormented by the evil spirit of the Lord here.
Yep.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I like how he's they've kind of had his character progress from like just kind of like ignoring some of the Lord's commands about killing Agag to then kind of relying on the witch, but then like when it really the rubber meets the road, his effort to rely on Besai's potion really fails him, and he's like worse off than ever. So I thought that was a good way to kind of set up like why Saul is not fighting Goliath. It's not just because he's purely a coward or anything. Yeah, Jonathan also, we see him in this episode like kind of struggling to deal with like the vacuum of leadership after his dad goes crazy. This was the other scene that's definitely from Lord of the Rings. This is like 100% influence Lord of the Rings, this scene.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, watch the Two Towers. There's no way that that this is not either. I think it has to be like intentionally influencing them, but at the very least, it's like unconsciously influencing them. But yeah, Jonathan he's trying to hold things together. And, now that his father's gone crazy and he doesn't quite know what to do. And at the end of the episode, Abner is telling him to take these Gentile assassins to try to kill Goliath. So yeah, what did you guys think of Jonathan in this episode?
I thought he was great. Like I say, there's a lot of Aomer kind of vibes going on. He's the conflicted son of a king, and kind of Faramir too. What do you do with your crazy dad? Especially when everybody around you is like starting to chirp a little bit about, why aren't we doing anything? He wants to get out. I mean, you can just kind of see this guy would have made a great king.
Yeah.
It's a shame that he didn't get that chance.
Yeah, and I like that he gets that moment where he's ready to like put on the armor and go face Goliath. Yeah, and it kind of raises an interesting question of like what would have happened if it done it. Like would God have preserved him, since he's mostly like trusting in God and stuff like that. But instead he's talked out of it by Abner, who has this more kind of underhanded plan, which I think we're definitely cued in to be like suspicious of, that they're relying on Gentiles and not going to face Goliath, for God's honor and stuff, in a honorable way. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Kyle?
I thought it was great. I love Jonathan. I can't wait for him and David to become friends. I just love the casting in this show is so good. Jonathan's such a good character.
Yeah. He doesn't even have to do much, but I definitely feel like Ethan Kai is just able to give like that kind of noble presence. Of like a character you like respect. It's a good example of like Jonathan as a character doesn't have like a ton of flaws to him, but they're actually able to pull it off pretty well, just because we like him, like we respect him for whatever reason.
I think this actor could have played David also.
He just looks cool. He's got a good presence about him, and I like that they're not texturing him up with flaws. I think sometimes we can get too smart, and sometimes it's just good to see a character that represents one thing. That can be important.
So let's move away from the battlefield for a second, unless you guys have any other thoughts on kind of the dynamics there. Let's get into the stuff going on back in Bethlehem. So we've got both kind of David's situation with Jesse, but then Samuel comes in, and Samuel's basically, so David is wanting Jesse to let him go to the battlefront. Jesse's refusing, and then David tries to get Samuel to pressure his dad to do it, and Samuel does kind of put some pressure on Jesse, but he also has some lessons for David along the way. So let's first hit on like some of the stuff between David and Samuel, and then we'll circle back to David and Jesse. What did you guys think of? We got more of like kind of David and the angel of the Lord, and kind of Samuel providing some more kind of wisdom to David about how this time that he's been in Bethlehem hasn't been a waste. Yeah, did you guys have any thoughts on how they pulled that off?
Well, this is some of my favorite stuff in the whole series so far. Just the
Mm,
interaction between Samuel and David. I thought the performances were great. The writing was great. Kind of going back to The Chosen. This was a scene of just two people talk, or three people
yeah.
if you want to count Jesse's talking scenes. But it was like every moment of this was riveting to me.
Mm,
Where you want it was. It's just it's a dichotomy between the two different kinds of ways that talking is handled. That you can
mm.
be two entirely different kind of tones and feels to it.
Yeah, I like how they had Samuel do. It's a very like kind of prophet sort of thing to do, where like he seems like he's bringing up something that's like totally like non sequitur to what they're discussing, and then like he just kind of he doesn't connect all the dots like immediately, but he's just kind of like putting these little breadcrumbs out there, inviting them to try to draw the idea that he's putting out there. So I thought that was pretty cool how they handled that.
Yeah, that's like full blown. I don't know Gandalf, but Dumbledore is kind of like that. That's like full blown wizard and fantasy type writing,
Yeah.
where they don't address it head on. They just kind of have they're at their own pace.
Yeah. That's definitely kind of a mythic trope of like the wise mentor figure who has like a strange way of addressing the problem that seems like very pressing to the main protagonist, but they the mentor seems like they're kind of sidestepping it, but they actually are just kind of seeing the bigger picture. So that was a cool aspect. And I like that
if I'm David, if I'm David and I'm talking to like a prophet or somebody prophet adjacent and he's telling me a story, I'm going to start to get a little nervous because like there's going to be a twist and it's probably going to be about me somehow along the way, or I'm going to be really shocked at it. So
yeah, but I mean, he hasn't had his big moment yet, so he hasn't had quite enough opportunities to realize how prophets can be sneaky. But I like how they're kind of setting that up, establishing like this is kind of the modus operandi of prophets, which is not always to attack things directly, but sometimes to kind of ensnare you in a little story that you think is not related to you or whatever. So that's a cool little setup for David's other big kind of moment encountering a prophet.
I mentioned this in a previous episode, but Stephen Lang is like for me the MVP of this whole season. He just kind of like nails this character in a way that it's never really kind of resonated with me as a character on the page before, but now I get it's like, okay, this guy was a big deal, and this is why everybody, acquiesced to him, because he was so powerful and he was so forceful. So
yeah, I agree with you. He's incredible in the role, and that's like give Jesus and The Chosen a little bit of that. Now, dude, it's by the way, Samuel is Shmuel just short for Samuel? And did I just realize that?
They're probably like related words.
I was gonna say they need to send Samuel out on the battlefield against Goliath because he gets after it. You remember, like they gave him he was like an Avenger out there fighting David. I was impressed.
Which is accurate to the Bible. Like Samuel, he leads Israel in fighting earlier on. So and he does hack Agag apart in the Bible. So definitely, I like that they have like given Samuel that sense of like real like fierce strength, which is in the biblical account, but not. That's something that people don't associate as much with prophets. We tend to think of like more of like kind of a frail old man. So I like that, they really emphasize that aspect of him being this strong figure.
Right. Yeah, I loved his performance. Quick aside, do you think in one of these seasons they're going to show that medium bringing Samuel up from the
Yeah.
dead.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I can't wait for that. There's nothing funnier to me than reading the commentaries of like proud biblical scholars who have defined theology and doctrine trying to make sense of that. Of that
Yeah,
moment.
it'll also be interesting to see like, yeah, like if they give like Samuel any lines there, like if they have like a little humor and you know, Samuel's got like some occasionally like a wry little line. Yeah, or I mean maybe it'll all be silent, but yeah, that'll be a really
I hope they give
interesting
him the lines because he has lines in scripture.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that was an aside.
Yeah, and then so kind of the Samuel and Jesse bit is kind of a parentheses within kind of the bigger overall story of the episode is, you know, Jesse is resistant to letting David go. David really wants to go. David's like, why aren't you letting me go? I can tell it's not just why you're, you know, what you're saying. There's got to be more to this. And then, you know, Samuel has to kind of put some pressure on Jesse to offer up his best to the Lord's army. And Jesse finally reveals that actually David has not been his most despised child this entire time. He actually deeply loves David, but yeah, has been trying to kind of keep him safe by keeping him away from the battles and keeping him isolated and stuff. Yeah, how kind of that whole thematic reveal work for you guys?
You want to go first, Victor?
Go ahead. I'll let you go first.
I really liked it. It wasn't. It was maybe a little bit predictable. Yeah. So a scene, a plot twist like that has in the past brought tears to my eyes. Snape in Harry Potter being one that comes to mind. Maybe the contrasts weren't drawn quite sharply enough to justify that here. Like I didn't have enough evidence to believe that Jesse really thought David was a shame. Even though they did put that in there. I don't know. It was just when I watched it, it didn't bring a tear to my eye, but I did like it.
Yeah. That was like my reaction exactly. Like it almost felt like, and I can't get into the heads of the writers and their motivations, but it almost felt like they were like worried that like would get like too bad of an impression of Jesse, so they had to give like too many hints early on that like actually, you know, even though he, you know, slapped David and stuff, like they kept hinting that there was kind of more to his perspective. And
right,
but I felt like they telegraphed it like a little too much in advance, so that it kind of like emptied the moment of its power a little bit. Because like you, like those like kind of like father son or quasi father son moments where there's kind of a sudden like change in the relationship. I think of like Lego Movie with like Will Ferrell and his son, or I don't know, just like moments like that can really like hit me in my heartstrings. So I was like a little disappointed that like I didn't feel this one quite as much. And I think, yeah, like you said, there also could have been like a little more contrast of like in this episode, maybe have David pushing like a little bit more against Jesse, and Jesse like getting a little more frustrated with David, instead of having him like, you know, we get that scene where they're just like praying together. Like it almost seems like things are fine, even though, you know, David doesn't like the decision. They're all just kind of, or the two of them are still just kind of hanging out. So I would have like kind of upped the tension between them leading into that moment, so that there would have been kind of a, even if it not a surprise, like just like a bigger kind of like catharsis or something
right,
to what happened. But like I like the general idea. You know, they're kind of doing something like a little bit of like Joseph, I think, or Jacob and his kids, like kind of loving one the most because of the wife who gave birth to him. So like I like the idea of it, and the whole, Samuel challenging Jesse to offer up his the best of what he has. But yeah, just if they could have found a little bit of a way to not kind of make it quite predictable. Yeah, I think it would have hit me a little bit more.
It wouldn't have been hard. Jesse doesn't know how to express his love, so he expresses it in anger, annoyance, and mockery.
Yeah.
The whole time. One slight point aside on this is another reason why season 2 should be David and Goliath on a road trip is because both of them are dealing with parents who sequester them because of their gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure they're trying to do that on purpose to draw a parallel between them.
Yeah.
But you guys, it just makes me root for Goliath even more. Anyways, I'll get off that high horse.
Well, they're definitely trying to parallel the two of them, because they even so Victor and I talked about this a little bit. So the name of Goliath's mom, Orpha, that's actually, in the story of Ruth, there are two brothers. Ruth marries one of the brothers, and the woman who marries the other brother, the other Moabite woman who marries her brother-in-law, is Orpha. So the rabbis developed this whole idea that after, so the two brothers die, Ruth goes with Naomi back to Israel, but Orpah, she goes back to her people and her gods. So the rabbis developed this idea that she eventually became the mother of the giants, and the show is kind of riffing off that a little bit. They don't like explicitly draw that out, so like they've got a little bit of like deniability. If you don't like the idea that this is the same character, it could just be a character with the same name. But that's definitely like kind of where they're drawing that from. So there is a sense in which like they're almost like kind of distant cousins or something.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I was wondering if I have a lack of Old Testament knowledge for sure, biblical knowledge in general. But I was wondering if they were saying that Goliath's mom was like hundreds of years old, like from the time when the sons of God came, if she was one of the women that the sons of God, did they thing with and had kids with, I was sorry, you can cut that out. That was probably not appropriate. But if she was one of the women that one of the fallen sons came and had children with, if they were saying like she was hundreds of years old, I didn't know. But what you just said,
they leave it a little ambiguous, which is probably a good choice. Like, not trying to define it too much, even kind of genre wise, like, we don't need like all the details of where the villain is. We don't need to know all the details of Sauron's background. Like we know they're the villain. We get a sense of kind of some of the more like evocative elements of where they're coming from. But yeah, not like getting like too precise is probably a good idea on their part. But yeah. Anyway, Victor,
real quick, I got one question about the still frame. I agree with everything you said. I was just thankful that they didn't drag the scene out too long. It just kind of got to the point. And, his little turn back to being a nice guy, it was telegraphed. You saw it coming a mile away. So I'm glad they kind of did it. They had some good other things in there that tied in with other stuff happening. So it didn't bother me that much. But my question is, okay, so the still frame you have, is that supposed to be her body lying on that bed? Covered by a sheet? No, they keep on looking at it. I know, but like they keep on looking at it, and they keep on like doing like little flash frames from when the mom was like dying on the bed. And then they're looking at this exact same spot where there's like a shape that looks like, that looks like it could be a head or a body right there. I'm like, I don't think they do, but maybe that's a tradition. I don't know. It's like, we're just gonna keep mom here in the where she passed away.
It's like great expectation.
20 years.
or not great expectation with like Psycho.
Oh.
Like what is he looking at? What are they looking
very different, two very different stories.
I'm thinking, yeah, with Miss Havisham like keeping everything in the room the same. That's where my mind.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it was really psycho with the mom. Still,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. As you were the connection there. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. I could be wrong. I don't think the body was there. I
they
mean,
just kept
it's
on
definitely
looking
not
at it. I'm like, it's
like the practice
yeah.
is definitely like you bury the dead within like a day or whatever, and mourn them or whatever. And even if you like dig up the bones, you like inter them in like a ossuary. You don't, keep the body there. But I mean, I could see it them potentially like seeing it as if she's there. But I just interpreted it as like them looking at the bed because it reminded them of that moment. Yeah, but it was like a kind of interesting setup for that scene.
That was my aside for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other kind of smaller storyline for the episode is Mirab and Mikal. Not as much happening there, but yeah, I'll be honest. Like going into like the like episode 1 when it set up Mirab, I was just thinking that she was going to be like kind of totally kind of like flat, like haughty, not haughty in terms of like proud and like arrogant.
No, you got your thumbnail. You just put that as your thumbnail with HOTTIE ? You get your views.
Yeah, but like I like that they've gradually over time kind of given her a little more dimension and like the friendship that they've established between the two of them. So yeah, it wasn't like a big element of the story, but I did like the friendship that we got to see between the two sisters. Yeah.
This was kind of their Hobbit moment. We're gonna put cloaks on and get on a horse and then ride off after the other heroes.
Yeah, no, it's a really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm excited to see their adventures. I'm excited to have Mikal see David go out there. There's going to be a lot of satisfaction in the final episode, I feel.
Yep.
See, can I ask you guys a Mirab question?
Mm-hmm.
Did I say her name right, Mirab? I thought it was a really, really interesting choice. This was a couple episodes back. Was she? What was she? She was coming
I had this exact
real hard.
Yeah, I had this exact. I brought this exact thing up to Victor, like where she like touches his hand. Like,
yeah, and the look she gives him is like a very specific look.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah. What do you think was up with that?
That's pretty much exactly what I asked Victor. What we kind of came to was like there's almost like a vicarious like she's just lost like her love, and like she's almost like living on like she sees the thing between her sister and him, and that's almost like kind of like she's almost like slipping into her sister's role herself, or like kind of feeling like a little like envy or like wanting a little bit of like what her sister has, while at the same time kind of like positioning herself as like a messenger, like a go-between with Mikal.
Right.
So in terms of like the trajectory of Samuel, Saul is going to eventually offer Mirab to David first before eventually giving him Mikal as a wife.
Wait, is this in scripture?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Okay,
no,
gotcha.
So the aspect of like how we don't know anything about what Mirab thinks of David, but Mirab as a character is in scripture, and it is said in scripture that after kind of David and Goliath and David's rising, the first daughter that Saul offers to David is Mirab, but then he ends up like taking her back, but then eventually David gets Mikal. So most likely they're setting that up, like maybe initially Mirab was a little not interested in the peasant boy, but he's growing on her, and more so like she's kind of like almost got like a kind of vampiric desire for what her sister has gotten from him, and so like it seems like they're gonna maybe like she's gonna kind of try to once Saul is like considering giving one of his daughters to David, like maybe she's gonna try to get him, but then things won't work out.
I think we had a little bit of a hint on this scene right here, where right at the end of it, she's talking like, I think McCall says, "Well, yeah, he's not interested in me," or whatever what she said. That you kind of see a little bit of a smile on Marat's face, like, okay, she's kind of giving me a little bit of permission to go after him because she's kind of moving away from David.
That's true.
I think there's going to be a little bit of that going on.
I would like it if she was low-key super in love with him, like genuinely. I think that would make, but she doesn't know how to go about it in the appropriate ways. Could make her a really sympathetic character.
Yeah, well, especially
like, who's not going to be in love with David?
I know, he's the man. He's great.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because we have like just like a couple of data points for Mirab, so it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do with her, and potential love triangle with David and Michal.
Dude, you're gonna get the women viewers onto House of David now. Like you were saying, it's mostly male here. Dude, you just need to have like a thumbnail that says Team Mirab or Team Michal.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, maybe we should have that conversation sometime. By the way, Kyle, Project Mayhem says that they love Kyle on this channel. Please add more of him. So
that's right, Project Mayhem. That's my wife's account.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know. Actually, who is Project Mayhem? Thank you. Shout out Project Mayhem.
But yeah, I think that's it in terms of like storylines that I was wanting to cover. Anything from episode 7 that we didn't get to that you guys wanted to touch on?
Oh my goodness, this is getting streamed.
I loved.
I didn't know this was getting streamed live with like a chat and everything.
Oh yeah, sorry. Things have changed.
Sorry
a little
for
bit
any
since
inappropriate things I said. Okay, sorry. Go on.
That's okay. The thing you said wasn't like in the context of the show. You're describing what's going on.
I just want to say one thing I really liked is how they justified why all the troops were just standing around for so many days. That's one of those things. Is like, why? I mean, they clearly had a bigger army. Why did they just go and wipe them out?
Yeah.
And they had this scene here where it's like, hey, having a small army's never really slowed the Israelites down in the past. So we're gonna break them down, mentally first, or we're gonna break their spirits down. And the way that Goliath did it, I thought they just nailed that part of it. We're like, okay, I'm fine that they're gonna wait for 9, 10, however many days of just waiting for somebody to step forward until David finally does.
I do like that they have established that Akish, like, he's not a believer, but he's aware of kind of Israel's history and some of the stories, and so he's like, he's not toying around with them, or like, he's got some smarts to him in terms of like, oh yeah, like they've taken on like huge armies before, so maybe I should like, not just like go at it full force or whatever. So I like that a little bit too. Yeah.
Just kind of contrasting the two shows we're reviewing here today. It's like when you see the David that all the Israelites and the Jews were just had as their main hero, you can see why there was people that were like expecting Jesus to be this guy. You understand what the appeal is and the draw and the putting all your hope and dreams into this mythic, force of nature. That's what they were thinking. That's what they wanted. So when some of them, like Judas, didn't get that, you really kind of see where they were coming from and why this person doing miracles could come along and not be seen by everybody as the person that was the Messiah that was spoken of, because it just didn't feel like David.
Mm. Yeah, and even more so, like, I mean, that's true with David. Even more so with like Saul. Like, I think it's just a natural desire that we have as humans to have this leader who's physically big. Like if you look at the presidential elections, it's much higher likelihood that you'll be elected if you're actually like physically larger than the other person, and who's armored and looks important, looks forceful, and so it is fun like having both of these episodes come out back to back. The Chosen and House of David, and as far as like it, like I put in my thumbnail, which king do you follow? It invites us to be thinking about, um, what are we like personally drawn to? Like, are we drawn to kind of that king who leads through force, or are we willing to submit and follow Jesus, who led through humility and suffering and service to his disciples, who came humbly into Jerusalem instead of coming with a big army, who was laughed at by the Pilate and the other forces that were in control at the time, because he seemed so unlikely of a potential threat, and yet was able to create a movement that has taken over the world. So yeah, I don't know. It's just cool to be thinking about these two shows in conversation with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kyle, do you have any other kind of final thoughts on either episode 7 or the two shows in conversation with each other before we sign out?
Just that it's nice to be alive right now when this is happening. I feel like we're at the forefront of a revival of biblical filmmaking and storytelling, and that's really, really exciting. I really like both of these shows, but just it's so good that they're both so good. Just think of what that's gonna sprout into.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. I've been predicting like a kind of new wave, or like a kind of Bible adaptation renaissance, since like at least like season 3 of The Chosen, where like you were getting more like mainstream outlets like covering The Chosen and making a big deal about it. And you knew once like it was showing up in New York Times and Hollywood Reporter and stuff like that, that like the different executives from the different companies would start paying attention and wanting to invest their money to get in on it, which may make some Christians queasy, but like that's the House of David. It's a financial venture, and it takes like a lot of money to be able to put a show together that's got this amount of quality, both in the actors and all the different sets and the design and everything else. So I'm grateful that we're, like you said, we're in this time where we're getting to kind of experience the benefits of the market that The Chosen has kind of helped establish. Project Mayhem. I've actually not seen the new Ben-Hur. What'd you think of it? I'm curious. Oh, good. Yeah, I'll at some point I'll have to check it out. Not right now. Too much with the Chosen and stuff to be able to get to, but maybe during kind of the off season, between seasons or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just excited that these two shows kind of show you can have good quality biblical adaptations, and they can feel totally different.
Yes.
And hit two totally different kind of genres.
Mm-hmm.
Which hopefully somebody will be like, well, wonder if we can do this other genre in, on a Bible show at this level, this scale. So I'm curious to see what somebody else comes along and does that.
Well, there is the Nick Cage. He's making a Bible horror movie where Nick Cage is Joseph. Joseph Jesus.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's like I think it's probably like still in production right now. But the initial like news of that like broke like late last summer, I think. Yeah. So
Interesting.
I think you could do. I'm not sure about that. Specific concept. We'll have to see what they do. I'm a little nervous about the concept they're going with, because it seems like they're making Jesus into like the creepy kid of lots of horror movies. But I think you could do like a Bible horror movie in a way that's like faithful. And I like horror films, so that I would love to see someone like accomplish it in a way that is respectful of scripture, but also like playing on some of the tropes of the genre and stuff like that. But yeah, like you said, I love that we're seeing kind of a multiplicity of approaches to Bible adaptation. The Promised Land last summer was also, I thought, a good start for like even more leaning into the comedy of the story of Moses. So
is it good?
Yeah. No, it like we went into it, my wife and I, like being like a little like hesitant, like, oh, Christian comedy, like, but it was a fun watch. And like, some good humor with the characters and stuff. So they've got a first season that they've been like locking in some of the episodes. So yeah, I'm guessing probably like summer or fall that'll come out. So amazing time
to watch that then.
Yeah. It's YouTube. Yeah, amazing time to be a fan of Bible shows. Once again, definitely, if you love this kind of stuff, check out thebibleartist.com. Again, if you can provide any support, I do put a lot of work into writing the articles, doing podcasts like these, just even paying for the website and for some of the different services, like what I'm using to live stream right now. So anything you can do to help that, make that continue is really appreciated. Oh, wow. Project Mayhem says they think that Dallas ought to hire the four of us to make our own show.
Who am I? Don't ask questions. We have work to do. Like that.
Yeah, no, actually, Victor and Kyle was with us for like.
I couldn't hang though. You guys, I was ill prepared. You guys took off with it. I was going to be an anchor, so I bowed out.
No, but
I'm vindicated, aren't I? Because weren't you guys talking about doing a David show? And I was like, you have to do Goliath. You can't just have Goliath be a flashback or something. House of David.
I feel very vindicated in that I feel like some of the problems of early House of David were due to them making David the point of view character. So I at least feel like some of the early issues with the show would have been solved if they'd taken more of the chosen approach of like introducing us through other characters, and then eventually we could get more into the perspective of David.
Did you see my wife just commented? Sorry. Okay, sorry to distract.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear you, Kevin.
Anyway, but thanks everybody who's been joining us. It's been a lot of fun. Victor, do you want to share about your book?
Sure, real quick. I'm writing a Christian fantasy novel. It's kind of Game of Thrones meets Narnia meets the Acts of the Apostles, and I'm offering a chapter a week for free on my blog, on my Substack. Link is below. It's called The Sojourners, and it's free. So I would be honored if you would join me.
Awesome.
Wait, can you say that one more time? Can you plug that one more time? Sorry, I wanted to hear that again.
Well, the book is called The Sojourners. It's a Christian fantasy novel, which kind of takes the idea of what would it take for a place like Westeros or Middle Earth to actually be converted to Christianity.
Oh,
what would the steps need to happen? So basically, it's four young kids from this other world get transported over to our world without knowing what's going on. And they have a bunch of experiences over here on our world where they learn about Jesus and other things. And then in true Narnia fashion, they go back to their world later on in their young bodies, and they realize they're the only 4 people in their entire world who know who Jesus is. So it's up to them to spread the gospel somehow in their entire world. So that's kind of a nutshell of what the series is.
Right on. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
As
really
Diana
fun.
just commented, she just said, "Sounds really cool," with a bunch of exclamation
Reverse. Just real funny. Reverse Narnia was the word that came into my head one day, and I put it sent a message to myself in my phone. Didn't know what it meant, and Reverse Narnia is now turned into this giant novel that I'm working on. So.
Oh, right on.
So yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll be back next week, following up on episode 8 of House of David and the next batch of The Chosen. So we're gonna have even more episodes to cover. So we'll probably have to move through them a little quicker because 3 episodes is gonna be that's gonna be a lot. But I get the there's something that Dallas said that makes me think that maybe these episodes will be like a little bit shorter so that as a whole they aren't like too like unwieldy. But yeah.
Yeah, I think just the running time of the thing is going to be shorter than these 2 episodes.
Oh, really?
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll check that. But yeah, I think it's going to be, because I was thinking 3 episodes. That's going to be a long kind of not a slog, but it's like, that's a lot. That's a lot of time to spend.
It felt like that a little bit in season 4 for some of the long batches of episodes for me. So,
you see Rupert?
Yeah. Batman left the room because he heard my wife coming home. But we'll reunite them in a little bit.
Yeah, Rupert misses Batman. The Batman or just Batman?
Batman.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we better sign off. I gotta. It's late here, but thanks everybody for joining us, and yeah, Godspeed.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me back on, Kevin. That was fun. And Victor, it was great to be on here with you.
Likewise.